Welcome to the Sex, Money, and Real Estate Podcast, the show for real estate couples about how to close more deals in the bedroom. My name is Nancy Jameson.
And I'm Bill Jameson.
And each week we deep dive into juicy, intentional, sexy conversations, sharing with you what it takes to create balance in your intimate relationships and your real estate business. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, baby.
Hey, baby, and hello to the Jam Fam.
Yes.
What's happening?
Oh, lots of things. Always. We have so many things brewing, and all of our businesses are rolling around, rolling forward. I mean, it's really fascinating. All of the amazing creation that we are in process of doing. So
many irons in that beautiful, warm, comforting fire.
Yes. So thank you for asking.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I feel the same. That life is great, and just really happy to be here and recording again with you.
Awesome.
It's been an extraordinary week. You know what I was thinking about?
Tell me.
I was thinking about this whole thing that everybody's been through over the last few months, and the shut-in thing, and I appreciate how well you and I have prospered being shut in with each other over the last 3-4 months. I mean, there's a lot of couples out there that would not have prospered. Their relationships might have gone apart, as opposed to how I feel that we've actually grown together over the last 3 or 4 months. So I just want to say thank you, and I love you, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, I feel the same. I definitely feel the same. It's awesome. Yeah. I love it. Beautiful. Cool. Well, before we get started, can I just make this housekeeping announcement? Because I definitely want to share.
You never have to ask permission.
With
my queen.
Thank you. I want to share our private Facebook group.
Okay, cool.
So we have a private Facebook group. It's called Sex, Money, and Real Estate, of course, after the podcast. And so it's just this amazing space where it's the community that supports sex, money, and real estate goes deeper into the conversations around all things sex, money, and real estate. So we have tips and tools and resources, again, that go definitely deeper into, for sure, creating $1 million, billion-dollar businesses and relationships, and go into around the money conversation and connect you with valuable resources that really just transform your life. So that's what I love about that. Yeah,
it's got the money conversation, the sex and relationship conversation, and of course the real estate conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
All intertwined.
Yep.
As always.
Yep. So it's for couples and for singles. So if you're single, it's definitely all about preparing you for the relationship. In other words, building your personal foundation so that you have this extraordinary relationship that everybody I talk to really dreams of having. And then if you're a couple, it's creating that intimate, juicy, sexy, connected relationship that you've always desired. If you're there, then it's cranking it up a notch or going a level deeper or 3 levels deeper. And what Bill and I call level up, LOVE-up, leveling up.
Leveling up, yes, for sure.
Yeah, so it's neat. So check it out. Sex, Money, Real Estate. It's a private Facebook group. You have direct access to us, and there's all kinds of things that we have planned for the very near future.
And here's the deal. The Facebook group is free for now, but I don't think it's going to be free forever.
No.
Because the material is going to get, bigger, deeper, juicier. So.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome.
Lots of learning opportunities. Cool,
yes.
Cool.
Yes. Well, awesome. What is your magic today?
My magic, my ability to influence self, others, and life in an empowering way. My magic. Yeah. I got a couple pieces of magic today. I want to just throw a shout out to my buddies Anthony and Matthew for a great one-to-one this week. A couple of like-minded guys that I do life with, and we just, we hadn't actually just hung out in a while, and it was great to do just that. Some loose conversation and catching up. And it was great because, Matthew is a father, I'm a father, and Anthony is a father to be. So to be able to get in those conversations a little bit, Because, my experience is that not a lot of dads hang out with other dads to have conversations before they have the baby. So to, just to have a conversation and talk about some expectations and start priming them up for not necessarily what to expect, but just the mindset and that kind of thing. And some things that he's probably haven't thought of or hasn't talked about yet. So it was cool. It was great, from not only just from having the baby, but from, the emotional support for himself and the self-care and, being able to take care of Erica and all that kind of stuff. So it was cool. It was a really great conversation. It was a couple of hours that flew by and it felt like a couple of minutes. And I enjoyed a smoothie at the same time. It was great.
Well, something that's really unique and awesome and amazing about Matthew is that him and his wife, Sarah, are essentially, for lack of a better term, are birthing coaches.
Right.
And so they have their own podcast. It's called Doing It at Home Podcast. And it's all around home birth. And so they had Maya at home. And then you and I had the amazing experience of being there when Maya, being on the birthing team when Maya was born and being on Sarah and Matthew's birthing team. And so here comes Maya in all of her glory. And so it's really great to have that conversation with Anthony because Matthew and Sarah are in that conversation all the time. Here's what happens at home birth. Here's what happens at hospital births. Here's what happens at birthing center births. Here's what happens, with doulas and all of that kind of stuff. And so, again, on the heels or on the eaves of Father's Day, just a really extraordinary experience for Anthony to have. And what resources? I mean, oh my gosh. So...
yeah, it was cool. It was cool to, open up those conversations. And then I can see where there's going to be a ripple effect where they're going to have more conversations. Anthony and Erica will have more conversations with Matthew and Sarah, just because now, we've cracked the door a little bit. So it was cool. It was really great.
That is very cool.
So, and then from a self-care, self-love standpoint and loving on my family at the same time, my other magic is that I went fishing the other day. So awesome. We found kind of this little fishing hole not too far from the house and we caught some catfish. So it was Rex,
they were delicious.
Lucas. Oh, it was so good. It was Rex, Lucas, and I, and then we had their great friend and what we consider a family member, Tristan, with us. And it was his second time fishing. I know he had a good time. And it was really great. And then being able to bring that fish home and have it filleted up, and I haven't had fresh fish like that in a long time.
Yeah, it was
it really was really
you made it
good.
Really good. Really good. I am well taken care of, ladies. Let me just say that. I am well served.
Heard. So yeah, that's my magic, baby.
Awesome. Well, that's great.
How about you? You got some magic today?
Yeah, so my magic is all around production. Real estate is definitely picked up and we're experiencing a lot of really cool things come to fruition. So we listed 2 properties yesterday alone, and then we have another one coming online, and we listed one last week. So it's definitely this is more like normal. Yeah,
and another buyer came online as well.
Right.
Today, actually.
Yeah, so like this is more. I mean, it's a little slower, but it's more approaching that normal space. So we definitely appreciate that a whole lot. And so this weekend is going to be our first live open house since this whole COVID thing began. And I'm super excited about it. We deployed a marketing strategy that we're excited about and is definitely yielding a lot of phone calls. And I don't know, I'm sensing multiple offers just by the sheer volume of texts and phone calls that I've already received. I mean, the thing's not even been on the market for 24 hours. So
that's fantastic.
It's it'll be great. It'll be very exciting. And, I love doing open houses with you because we always pick up a minimum of 2 buyers.
Yep. Every time.
So it's great. It's great. So yes, that is definitely my magic.
Cool.
For sure.
Great magic.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, just be sure to stick around, everybody, to the end, because we definitely have some action steps that as we go through this process that we're about to go through, we want to make sure that you have the ability to implement them. I mean, they're immediate, implementable action, just all about cultivating empowering relationships with your parents, partners, and clients. Because the title of this podcast, as you know, is How Having an Asshole for a Father Taught Me Valuable Life Skills.
Yes, that's me.
So we just really wanted to talk very candidly about that, because in our experience, there are definitely a lot of men that have not so powerful relationships with their father. And again, on the heels of or eves of Father's Day, not every story is rainbows and unicorns, So, shall we begin?
Sure. What you got for me? I know you, I think you jotted down a few things.
I did. I wanted to have a couple of talking points and really flow with you on this.
Okay.
I know my experience of you is that you have done a lot of work around unraveling and unearthing, your relationship with you and your dad. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate that, because it's definitely reflective in our life now. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I would like to start with some context or backstory around the relationship with you and your dad. So if you want to start there, and then I can pepper in some questions.
Oh, that's interesting. So where do I start with that relationship?
What's his name?
Oh, his name is also Bill.
Yeah.
He is William C. Jameson, and I am William H. Jameson. So he was named after his father, and I was named after him and my grandfather, who was also a William. So anyway, William Cecil Jameson, William Harold Jameson, some old school names for sure.
Yeah.
And so my dad, I'm just right to it. I just what I remember about my relationship with my father is that it was always up and down. There's a lot of up and down with that, and a lot of a conditional love. There was a lot of conditional love. If you were doing great, he loved you. And if you weren't doing great, it never felt like he loved you quite as much as, on the other side of things. Mm. So everything felt really conditional for me. And, there was some other sprinklings of things in there. There was some verbal abuse, and there was other abuse in the house. So, all that energy was very heavy. It was heavy. It was heavy on me. It was definitely heavy on my sister and my mom. And none of us had any of the tools to really handle any of that. So, what it looked like was that, I didn't have a whole lot of ambition. I was overweight and, never felt really truly, in the center of myself, which played out with my relationships with not only my parents, but played out with, my friends and how I fit into school for years and years, and how I fit in with anybody really. So there was that, the verbal abuse was interesting, and I never knew any different. So, that experience was, it is what it is. And with hindsight, I realized that it was not advantageous for me to have the words used that way with me or against me. And, again, just felt like so much force around the house. He was a very forceful guy. And I know that, his upbringing, that, he was doing the best that he could, in the way he was brought up. Cause I don't know for sure, but I believe there was some kind of physical abuse in his background as well. So maybe and if that is true, then it is amazing that, he didn't beat on my ass, more than he did. Mm. But yet, he found other ways to beat on me. So, maybe there was some healing there. I don't know, where, he let it out through his words and his anger, and always being angry, as opposed to, his father or his grandfather, whoever it was that used to really, really come down on him and his brothers. Mm. So, as I came into, had that coming of age, there was some rebellion. There was definitely a lot of drinking at a younger age, and there's some things that I had in common with my father that we enjoyed together. So I'm not going to say it was all anger and all force. There were some commonalities. They didn't go deep, mind you. I mean, I'm talking, our common stuff was like food and cooking and cars and motorcycles and, some really cool but superficial stuff. It's not like we were ever talking about, personal development or, how to better yourself or no, there was none of that kind of stuff. It was always cars and motorcycles and food. And, so as that coming of age was coming on, there was that rebellion, and I realize it now that it was rebellion, just almost looking to get caught, although I didn't really get caught very much. So, I guess that was a bonus, where I hung out with my friends a lot. I wasn't at the house. I came home to sleep, and that was about it. I didn't get a lot of support with school or college or anything like that. And so I ended up finishing college, and all that was pretty much almost 100% paid for by me. And it was just interesting, just so many lessons that I think about. I'm so grateful to have now, because we never talked about finances. We never talked about school. I'll never forget, going to ask him. He was one of the ways that he stayed. One of the ways he earned a living when in the 70s was for him to become a high school teacher, and he was a Spanish high school teacher. And I thought, cool, I'm going to go take Spanish in high school, and then I'll have something else in common with my father. And then I was terrible at Spanish, or I felt terrible at Spanish. And I remember going to ask him for help for Spanish. He was like, for God's sakes, he was a Spanish teacher, right? And I couldn't get it. I could not get that out of him. And so consequently, I know poquito Spanish. So, and that's kind of how it went. He had some restaurants that he opened. He had some small restaurants, and I worked in those, and, I had some talent around that. So, we had that in common as well. But there came a time where I was like, you know what, it's time to go. And I, right between my sophomore and junior year, I was like, I'm going to take some time off from school.
Of college.
Yeah, college.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go hang out with my friends for a while. From Chicago, we went down to Florida and hung out, and it was for 1 year. And we came back. But that year, that was like the Great Divide. That was the Great Divide, and he literally, and this is back in the time when, there weren't cell phones and stuff, but there were phone cards. So you could still call from anywhere using a phone card. And, I had their phone card, but yet on that trip down to Florida, that phone card was cut off. And I remember thinking, okay, that's it. They or he does not want to communicate on any level right now. So, and I get it. He felt, betrayed and took it personally that I was ready to do something on my own. So I get it now. But at the time, I took it very personally. I was like, what the fuck? What is what's going on that you don't see that I can go do something on my own and we can still have a relationship? So that whole family centered, we gotta stick together, and I'm going to hand the business down to you, and you're going to hand the business down to your sons, and all that kind of stuff was I don't know. It was an interesting way of thinking, and great for some people, and that's not, and really with his help and my mom's help, not the path that I was on. So it never really healed. The relationship never healed. We gave it a couple goes. I did come back after 1 year. Our lease ran out in Florida, and I came back and finished college, and I continued to live in Chicago and live in the area, not, about an hour away from where my parents' house was. And, there were some holidays and stuff like that, but it was just never the same. And I felt like, for whatever reason, he was getting angrier and more forceful over time. And so we never linked up again, there was just no synergy there. There was definitely no, to me, it didn't feel like there was too much spiritually for us to connect on. And, I'm using all these words and these phrases right now. And, mind you that I had, I'm clueless, right? I'm clueless. So I don't know what I'm really experiencing at that moment. It just feels like chaos this whole time. And, Yeah, so it feels like chaos, and again, I don't have the tools, and I don't have the wherewithal to figure out what the tools are, because I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what I don't know, right? So, and where I was at the time, I wasn't attracting anybody into my life that could assist me with that either. So I hung out with it for a long time. So that's my background. Any questions?
No, I was just thinking how many times I met him.
I don't know, once or twice?
I think it's 3.
3 times?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 3.
Cool.
It may have been twice.
What was your impression?
I feel like it was 3 though. Disconnected.
From himself.
From self, for sure. Just in pure, like it's almost like a self-loathing kind of situation. Very surface, uninterested in engaging. I mean, just really, he could have been a stranger, like he just could have been
right,
somebody wherever. Like it was just, and it just happened to be your dad,
right,
your father, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great recap.
I mean, it really didn't go much beyond that. No. I mean, one of the times was Heather's wedding. One of the times, because he didn't come to our wedding, because I think he was getting surgery at that point.
Yeah, he had manifested some kind of cancer at that point.
Yeah, something that he was getting surgery on. And then he met Rex. The only reason he met Rex was because we took him to meet your grandma Mary.
My grandmother, yeah.
Yeah, and he happened
Jameson.
to be there. I think that may have been it.
That was probably the last time, huh? And he took off that day. He wasn't, curious to hang out or anything.
Yeah, no, he really didn't know what to do with himself.
He was out the door.
Yeah. And so Rex's name is William.
Yes.
Rex, so, and obviously we call him Rex. So, I mean, he was definitely named after you. So there was for sure like a lineage. It's fascinating to reflect on that.
Yep.
So yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we wanted to do something for Father's Day, and then this whole thing came up, and then the concept of him being an asshole came up. So I wanted to ask you if you actually consider him to be an asshole.
That is a great question. And I don't, and if you had asked me a few years ago, I totally would have been like, my dad was a fucking asshole, and I would have been, and I still jokingly refer that way. And probably that joke is a little bit of a deflection, but, yeah, not in I don't hold him in that light the way that I used to at all. I've done a lot of work, with the help of others, on some of that inner child stuff and the forgiveness for who I was and who I was being and still do, And, just putting in the reps with playing for being the greatest version that I can be now, part of that is, holding a space for him and who he was and the part that he played in my life and leading up to who I am now, for myself and for you and the boys and for really, this really neat circle of people that we hang out with, our friends and our family. And, it's, I couldn't imagine it any other way, because it's a story to share, and it's been helpful to be that it, if I joke that it is if I get in a situation, I can just think about like the opposite of what my father would have done. And it's like a little George Costanza thing. And, do the opposite and I'll be doing all right. So, but to answer your question, no, I don't. It's that unconditional love that I now feel for him, for where he was and what he was doing, fully accepting him for his decisions and knowing that, his uniqueness was his and it had nothing to do with me.
Do you remember like a specific point in which that changed for you? Like, when did that conversation change?
It took a while. It took years and years. It really didn't change until like the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. We sit in an accountability group. We've sat in several, and we call them here. They're in it right now. They're in Atlanta. They're called COI, Circle of Influence. Taken from the 7 Habits, Circle of Influence, Circle of Concern. Mm-hmm. And every week somebody gets to get highlighted. Mm-hmm. And it's a circle of 7 people, and every week somebody gets to get highlighted, and we call it Epic Challenge. Where can we basically man up in a certain or woman up in a mm-hmm. certain area. And so I started talking about what was I don't even know what I was talking about. But I know that it led back to my father and some inner child stuff that helped me to re-examine really his role in my life, so that was a big one. And that's when I started really like going back, and I call him Billy. I was called Billy as a kid. Nobody really calls me Billy anymore. The last person to really call me Billy was my grandmother on my mom's side, mm-hmm. which was fine and great. But that I grew out of that, or people never saw me as a Billy at some point. And but so I go back and I talk to Billy sometimes, mm-hmm. and when I feel like some of that stuff come up that I know is childhood stuff, whether I'm being I'm not being courageous or
rebellious.
Yeah, maybe rebellious. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's anger. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can show up in all kinds of ways. I think anger is one, or not being present is another way for me to think about how Billy was not present, because I was always focused on, how to do something coming up or something that was done to me in the past. I wasn't present as a kid at all. So, yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I feel like it did. I mean, you were sharing with us about how, like, if there were, you and I call them peg days, where it was like that day that you remember that really kind of changed or modified the trajectory in which you were on. So it changed the conversation of dad is an asshole to dad is, maybe dad's doing the best he can, to holy cow, I believe in consciousness creates and every choice has a consequence, those principles. And so if that's true, then I created this relationship and I chose my dad as my dad, which means that I have the ability to transcend the lessons of being a dad, or this, being in this victim conversation. So,
yeah, what also translated with that was, I went from in my relationship with him and being, kind of that awkward kid and maladjusted. There was a point where I think I made a decision, probably unconsciously, where I wanted to be liked by everybody. And so, kind of the opposite of that. And so as I got out of my current environments, my hometown, my small hometown outside of Chicago, and got downtown Chicago working in restaurants and stuff, I was free to be me. Mm-hmm. And so, and that wasn't necessarily the healthiest thing either, but yet, I was still experiencing something different. I had all the friends and hung out and, socialized and, a lot. And, I think that's probably, I would say that, again, this is probably some unconscious type of stuff, but that's where, a lot of that like savior complex stuff came in, because, not only want to be liked and accepted by everybody, but hey, Bill can save the day kind of thing. And I think that carried on for a long time, right into our marriage. Mm-hmm.
Well, it served you. I mean, it was serving you. It was providing you that maybe that parental comfort or that validation or something that either, you didn't get as a kid or from your parents or from wherever, whatever peer group or whatever. So it served you. Yeah. And then there was evolution out of it.
Absolutely. And and yes, and being that more open energy that I was experiencing, not only attracted just about anybody into my life, but it also attracted some powerful people and some amazing people, including you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, so it that changed my trajectory as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did.
For sure. Yep.
Okay. So that being said, when did you realize you wanted to be a father?
It was after we were together for a while. I needed to get grounded with you to know that I wanted kids. You know, and you know, you and I, when we first got together, we didn't want kids. You know, I guess didn't want kids. We didn't see a future with kids.
Yeah. Nope.
So, you know, we were together for, you know, like 3 years, just, you know, bopping around city to city, working in some restaurants and stuff. And then we were married, and we were married for 7 years before we had kids. And I don't think I decided that I wanted kids until, right before we had Rex. I think there was like a decision made that like, okay, maybe kids would be cool. Where maybe I had done enough inner work. And again, this is not all as intentional as it may sound right now, but it was just, you know, through being in a stable relationship and having some other stable relationships, like your parents, you know, your mom and her husband, and then your dad being a father figure for me. And having those examples, as well as a few others where I was like, oh, okay, it's okay to be a dad. You'll be okay, kind of thing. So yeah, that was, so I would say that between the stability of our relationship and the stability of seeing what, you know, some other relationships could look like with children, that I started to ease up a little bit. So, and it was never, you know, it was never any doubt, like, you know, anybody knew me, it was like, you know, children and animals, they all love me, you know what I mean? So it wasn't necessarily that, but I think there was a, you know, it was a capacity or a confidence,
a maturity.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. That's cool. Cause it happened. I mean, once we decided, it was like, boop.
Oh yeah. We got pregnant like
immediately.
In a day. Right.
So that's very cool. Very cool. So do you think your relationship with your dad has impacted you being a dad?
Well, of course. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
I mean,
the floor is yours, babe.
I mean, I think being a dad has cooled me off a little bit. It also gives me an opportunity to revisit some of those Billy conversations, and to really look at, you know, what I'm saying or doing, you know, with those two rascals in the other room here, because you know, there's lots of times where I know that I'm not fully healed when I can feel, you know, my temperature going up and my voice going up, and you know, and I'm to a point now where when I feel that going on, I stop. I don't even look for that middle road right now, because it's kind of on or off sometimes. So, you know, thank goodness that you're here to help balance me out with that stuff, and I leave it to you to do that. So I appreciate it. And there's other times where I know that I have just such genius with them. You know, and I'm fostering a lifelong relationship with them that is unique, for sure. Much more unique than the one that I have with my dad. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Again, doing the opposite, putting in all the work on myself and the work on us has just, you know, and I know that they're getting conversations. Even if we stopped having conversations right now with those guys, they've still had thousands more impactful conversations than I ever had with my parents. You know, like they could take everything they have right now into adulthood and probably be more adjusted than, you know, most adults, honestly. Yeah. And I still have so much more to give them.
Yes.
So absolutely it changed the trajectory of that. Yeah. Much more caring. Much more unconditional, always accepting their uniqueness for who they are. And yeah, it's awesome. And I know that they love spending time with me too.
They sure do. I mean, you do all kinds of cool stuff with them. Teach them how to MacGyver the crap out of something.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that and fishing and camping and the cars and the trucks and, is that a supercar, Dad? Yeah, that's a supercar. And then here's why it's a supercar. And I mean, it's really extraordinary. Yeah. Cooking. I mean, ping pong. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, all that stuff is cool. And then, the conversations that we all have, talking about, some causality and effect and
the trust talks.
And the trust talks and the sex talks. And I mean, we talk about, stuff that most kids don't get, so, and I don't expect them to necessarily get it all, but I know that it's landing somewhere so that they're not as surprised later on when whatever the sexual conversation that teenagers are having comes up, that they're like, what the, is this, or is this normal? At least they have some context for it. So, yeah.
And they have an understanding and a belief, like they trust that they can come back and have the conversations with us wherever they are. And
absolutely.
you, I mean, you definitely lead that whole trust talk with the boys.
Yep, that's true.
I think it's beautiful. Yes. Did anything come up for you when you realized we were having boys versus girls?
Not so much. There might have been a little bit of relief that there were boys because they were boys.
Well, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Me too, by the way.
Cool.
Even though we would rock a girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And where I was in that moment was, that was great. And we had one, then we had two, and I was like, okay, rinse and repeat. Awesome. Even though it hasn't been rinse and repeat. But,
oh my gosh, no.
But that was the, the sequence of thoughts at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but no, I don't, I mean, if it was a daughter, I think that it would have helped to continue to recontextualize my thinking about women and queens and them owning their power and that kind of thing in a different way. And that would have been cool too. To bring a rocking girl in this world that is in her power and, knows knows her mind and what she wants and really the most beautiful way to get it done.
Yeah.
And they do too, the boys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very cool. It's very cool. So your dad has transitioned.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah. Where are we? 2020. So I guess it's been 3 years?
3 years,
3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything, did you feel anything like when that happened? Was there any kind of, any kind of conversation that came up? Like, oh, I wish I could have done this, or I didn't get this, or any kind of feeling, or you were just nothing?
No, I was numb, a little bit numb when I heard the news that he was gone. And I think that was more of just pure attachment to having a parental figure as opposed to not because of the relationship. It was just more attachment to the parental, the label. Yeah. There you go. And, and where I was at that point was that, there weren't any regrets. I know a lot, I have read and heard about stories where people go through, and they never repaired that and went back and reconciled with their parents and blah, blah. It's like, that's just not how I roll. We were where we were, and I fully accept that. I honor where we were in our relationships with ourselves and each other. And so I was cool with it. I was really cool with it. Yeah, no regrets about him passing and not having any of those, last words or whatever. I mean, of course I thought about it. Of course I thought about and processed through that. And at the end of the day, we just didn't really have a relationship that either of us was really interested in being in, So, thank you for being my father. And I had some other dads that I could lean on. So,
yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Anything else come up for you?
No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the relationship. And if anybody had asked me that, 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, I don't think that those words would have ever come out. So I am grateful for the relationship. That relationship has impacted every other relationship in my life. Every single one. And I would not be the person that I am without it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I wouldn't have been put here if I couldn't handle it,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have been put in that position or whatever you want to say to, if I couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that.
Yeah. And there's definitely things that you intentionally created for the purpose of healing.
Absolutely. And I created it all. That's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, where I was maybe angry or not compassionate or any of those words, it was, it was an opportunity for me to rescript and remember who I am and recontextualize it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
It's taken some time and it's an ongoing thing. And, we've talked about this in other episodes, you heal something up and, you might be feeling great for a minute and then, and you still are, but something else may come up for healing as well in the same line of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all great.
Yeah, it is. And what I think is so amazing is that you started off talking about how your dad healed some of the relationship and took like the physical abuse into, now it's verbal. So he took it, it was yelling. And so he healed an aspect of that, of that loop. And here you are in this relationship with our boys and there's like none of that. And so what I feel that you did is you stopped, like you interrupted the whole pattern
cycle,
of that. Yeah, you stopped the whole cycle. And so it could have been very easily for you to go the other way and say, nope, I'm victim to this and this is who I am and I am what I am and I have no control over this or I can't change this or whatever. And you're like, I'm leaning into this. I mean, you're literally, that's how I look at this is you're leaning into this conversation and you're like, how can I impact this so that my kids feel the connection? So I feel the connection to my kids and be that was not for me. So that's what I appreciate about you. I mean, that's extremely courageous and bold and surrendered and strong and brave and all of those things. So you're impacting yourself and you're impacting those two and for sure the other kids around us by your wisdom and by your thoughtfulness and by who you're being. And you could have chosen so easily to go the other way and yet you didn't. And you continue to choose greatness every day. So
thank you.
That's what I think is amazing. I mean, that's a huge victory, a huge win.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So action steps. I mean, do you have action steps for anything like that would cultivate? I mean, really, this is about cultivating empowering relationships. We happen to be talking about your dad right now, but it's cultivating and empowering relationships with your parents or your partnerships or frankly, your clients. I mean, that's a big part of what we're doing and why we're here. So, and I think really you said it just before is that you just acknowledge that you created it all.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first step.
Yeah, for sure. That's the first step. Acknowledge that you created it. You may not find joy in everything that you created. And yet that's where you get to recontextualize that too, knowing that you are an amazing creator and whatever it is there. So acknowledge it. And then when you do acknowledge it, I feel like that's always like 50% of the process is just the acknowledgement that for the very process of acknowledging whatever it is for you creates the momentum for the next step. It gets you out of denial, or it can help get you out of denial.
At least shine a light on it,
Yeah. And then, so when you do shine that light on it, then, the other action step is commit to the journey. It is a process of forgiveness and acceptance. So, whatever that looks like for you, and seek out a coach or get on some kind of journal journey or, whatever it takes is, a lot of times we have this stuff so pent up that, we don't really know what to do with it. So,
or where to start.
Yeah. So find that outlet. Don't let it be your kids or your spouse or yourself, and your self-care. Work, and no play makes for a dull boy and an angry boy and a forceful boy.
Yeah.
So.
I learned this one a while ago about just writing a very simple letter. So it was, it's either you could do this with as you're working on your inner child and reparenting your inner child or a younger version of yourself. You may be a teenager or something like that. Or you can use this in writing to somebody who may have passed already that you want to have a conversation with. So it's simply writing a letter. And it can be yelling at somebody, cursing at someone, forgiving someone, writing down all the things that you loved about them. Like, it's your letter. You write whatever you want to write. There's not necessarily like a right or wrong per se. It's just you expressing yourself fully, authentically, unapologetically, and putting it down on paper. And it's a beautiful process for sure.
Yeah.
So that would be definitely something that you can do right away.
Yeah, and if it's not with a parent or something like that, then write a letter to yourself. A little self-love.
Yeah, love note
can go a long way. And if that note looks like a list of things that that make you amazing and unique, do that. And if there's some kind of craziness comes up in your head around, your opportunities, make a list of that too. And then there's your starting point. So. But we're all such beautiful people with such beautiful and unique talents and gifts that it's we all have a lot to offer, and sometimes most of the time we sell ourselves short and don't really acknowledge those gifts. So
they say that we each have 300.
Is that right?
Gifts and talents.
300?
Yep.
Oh, maybe I need to start a new list. Cool.
Or just add on to the one you
my
have.
list. Yeah, there you go. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So
I love it.
Cool. You feeling complete?
Yeah, I am.
I am too.
I think that was wonderful, and I appreciate your transparency and your tears and the emotion. And I just, I feel like we completed and went through another level of healing associated with that. And I appreciate you going deep. It's very sexy.
Thank you. And thanks for holding space. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Very good.
I love you.
I love you too.
And I love our Jam Fam. If you all have any questions or comments or even have an experience that you'd like to share or talk about, and maybe I'm the set of ears for you, reach out, because I'm very willing to have these conversations. And sometimes it's easier to have a conversation outside of your current circle.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So and I'm happy to listen.
Yeah.
So
great.
Cool. Until next time.
Yes. Love goes out.
See you on the flip side.
Wow, what a show. Thank you so much for listening. If you're inspired, we ask that you share the podcast with one person and subscribe and follow our show. I'm Nancy Jameson.
And I'm Bill Jameson.
And remember, it's a great life.
Woo!
Quick note about the Sex, Money, and Real Estate podcast. We are not doctors or licensed therapists. We are a joyous, abundant, and mature couple passionately sharing our story of growth around sex, money, and real estate. Our thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are our own, so please consult your doctor, healthcare provider, or your broker regarding any questions or issues you have related to your physical or mental health or specific state laws regarding your real estate business.